The clatter of silverware echoed too sharply against the old dining room walls. We were gathered for supper on Munjoy Hill, the smell of baked haddock still lingering when my mother drove her fork into the table as if she were staking a claim. Her voice followed, sharp and unshakable. You have 24 hours to get your things out. This house is your brother's now. The words didn't sound real at first. I searched my father's face, hoping for contradiction, but he never lifted his eyes from his plate. My brother Rogan leaned back in his chair, arms folded, a smug line tugging at his mouth. I felt the weight of silence pressing down harder than any storm off Casco Bay. I looked around the room I had poured years into, fresh paint on the trim, windows I'd replaced after the last nor'easter, the sturdy floorboards I refinished with my own hands. None of it mattered now. In one sentence, I was erased. My chest tightened, but I refused to give them the argument they were prepared for. I set my napkin on the table and pushed back my chair without a word. My mother's eyes narrowed, waiting for me to explode, but I would not give her the performance she expected. My father sipped his water like a man who had already chosen a side. Rogan smirked as if victory were already his. The house that had been my safe harbor was slipping from me. Yet I kept my voice still and my steps steady. On the porch, the wind off the bay cut against my skin, but clarity came with it. They thought silence meant surrender. They thought 24 hours was all I had. It would be enough. The house lay quiet after the argument, every corner humming with memory. I walked slowly from room to room, my footsteps soft against the boards I had sanded myself. In the kitchen, the cabinets still carried the faint scent of varnish I'd brushed on during the late nights after work, when I stayed up to finish projects no one else cared to touch. My hands had scrubbed the stains out of this space. My paychecks had bought the new appliances. Yet now it was claimed as someone else's gift. I drifted into the living room, letting my fingers graze the warm beige walls I had painted only 2 summers ago. I remembered standing on a ladder, roller in hand, determined to brighten the place after years of grey. Rogan had been gone then, off chasing contracts in other states, too busy to return calls. My parents had murmured appreciation at the time, but it hadn't lasted. Tonight, those walls stood mute, their glow dimmed by betrayal upstairs. I paused outside the small bedroom I had made my own. The storm of 5 years earlier came rushing back, wind tearing shingles from the roof, rain driving through leaks in the attic. My father had thrown up his hands, said there was nothing to be done without money. I had written the checks to the contractor, drained what savings I had, and signed for overtime at my firm to cover the rest. The repairs had held, proof that I could keep us safe even when the world outside raged. Near the stairwell, I touched the railing, still smooth where I had sanded splinters away. My grandfather Silas had stood here once, his voice rough but kind as he told me, "These boards will need your hand someday." At the time, I thought he meant simple chores, but now his words felt heavier, as if he had seen this night coming. I stopped at the front door, the air cooler there, salt from the harbor seeping in through old seams. The house seemed to breathe with me, holding the weight of all I had poured into it. Tomorrow I would need answers, and I already knew who to call. I barely slept, the house pressing in on me with a silence that no longer felt safe. At dawn, I wrapped a coat around my shoulders and stepped onto the porch, staring toward the eastern promenade, where the bay was just beginning to glow with pale light. My phone felt heavy in my hand as I scrolled to Sloane Merrick's number. We had met years ago at Bowdoin, both of us restless to prove ourselves. She'd gone into law, sharp-minded and uncompromising, and I had always trusted her judgment. When she answered, her voice carried the same no-nonsense edge I remembered. I told her everything: the dinner, my mother's decree, my father's silence, Rogan's smug grin. She listened without interrupting, only the faint scratch of her pen coming through the line. When I finally stopped, she exhaled slowly. "Meris, first thing, you are not being legally evicted. A parent shouting at dinner is not a notice. Maine law requires due process. They can't just push you out overnight." Her certainty steadied me. Still, the sting of betrayal clung to my skin. "They gave me 24 hours, I said. "They mean to hand it all to Rogan." "Then we start with proof," she replied. "Receipts, mortgage records, any emails or contracts from when you covered their debts. And one more thing, probate files. Do you know if your grandfather left a will?" The question jolted me. I remembered Silas's rough voice, his hand on the railing, telling me the house would always need me. He owned it until he passed, I whispered. But I assumed it went straight to them. Never assume, Sloane said firmly. If a will exists and it names you, your parents may not have had the authority to gift the house at all. I'll have someone search the probate court today. I leaned against the porch column, the cold seeping through my coat, but a flicker of warmth building in my chest. For the first time since last night, I felt less like a trespasser in my own life. I'll gather everything, I said. Good. The tide's already shifting. Don't waste energy on arguments, find the rocks and stand on them. Her words stayed with me as I went back inside, pulling open drawers for folders of bank statements and receipts. By mid-afternoon, Sloane called again, her voice tight with urgency. Meris, I found something. I pressed the phone hard against my ear as she explained. She'd had a clerk at the Cumberland County Probate Court pull every file tied to Silas Alden's estate. Among them lay a notarized will dated 3 years before his death. It was simple, direct. With his broad signature stamped beneath the seal, the house on Munjoy Hill was left solely to me and my knees buckled, and I sank into the armchair I had bought with my first real paycheck. For a moment, the room tilted. I thought of evenings with my grandfather on the porch, his hand steady on mine as he pointed out ships crawling across Casco Bay. He had known. Somehow, he had looked past everyone else and trusted me to keep the house alive. Why didn't they tell me? My voice cracked. Because it didn't suit them, Sloane answered. The will was filed. Your parents had access to it, and they chose to act like it didn't exist. They couldn't stomach the truth that Silas passed over them and over Rogan. A hot flush rose in my chest. I pictured my mother's narrowed eyes at dinner. My father's refusal to look at me. Rogan's smirk. The betrayal wasn't just in their words last night, it had been years in the making. They had buried my grandfather's decision to prop up Rogan, to protect his pride and give him a stage he hadn't earned. Sloane's tone sharpened. We can enforce this. I'll prepare a petition, but you need to stay calm. Gather receipts, document your contributions, keep everything organized. They'll fight, but the signature on this paper is stronger than their performance. I stared at the copy Sloane emailed moments later, the black ink stark on my phone screen. His handwriting, the same loops I remembered on old letters, named me as heir. They had hidden it, hoping silence would erase me. But the silence was ending. I stood, the decision settling into my bones like stone. If they wanted me out in 24 hours, then in 24 hours they would learn whose house this truly was. The next morning, I moved quickly, determined to act before my parents returned or Rogan arrived with his suitcase. I called a local company, Portland Harbor Movers, and explained what I needed: a rush job, only a few large items, nothing more. The man on the line hesitated at the short notice, but by noon, he promised to send a crew. While I waited, I walked through the house with a stack of sticky notes and a pen. I marked only what I had bought: the slate gray sofa I'd saved for months to purchase, the stainless steel washer I installed in the basement, the curtains I had chosen to match the beige walls. Each tag was both a memory and a receipt. Proof of my labor when no one else would lift a hand. That I in the dining room, I paused at the oak table my grandfather had built decades earlier. The chairs around it were mine, new, sturdy, bought after my mother complained about the wobbly ones. I marked them but left the table untouched. The cedar chest in the hall, filled with old quilts, I left as well. I wanted no accusations of theft. I wanted the truth clean. Through the window, I saw Mrs. Penfield from across the street watching.